Story 1. My uncle served in the Vietnam War through 1964 through 1967. My uncle is 78 now, and he doesn't care of me sharing this to anyone, not to release any of our names. And I heard this story told by him 6 or 7 times now, and I try to find some information that he hasn't mentioned the time before, I think. My uncle did a lot of things in the war, known as a tunnel route. In case if you don't know what a tunnel route is, it's basically a soldier who goes under underground tunnels and just destroy missions, those type of things. But my uncle and 3 of his other friends, who he still refuses to name to this day, was crawling under this tunnel, and a few minutes of walking in the tunnel, my uncle and his 3 friends, they heard a kid screaming at the top of his lungs. That's my uncle called out, "Hello?" No response. Then far into the tunnel, my uncle and his 3 friends, his 3 columnmates, heard a kid call out for help. That's when my uncle then picked up their pace, fearing that someone probably might be in danger. Then a few minutes of running in the tunnel, they got to this little room. It was empty, my uncle said. My uncle said it was empty, just except for a little bit of furniture. And then one of his friends discovered some stairwells. That's when my uncle and the rest 3 walked down those stairwells, and what they found down there in those stairwells, that's what made their hearts completely burst. Down at the foot of those stairwells, they found a lot of different dead bodies. They weren't killed by just bullets. No. It looked to be mutilated by some creature or something. One seemed to look to be as a kid. The scene was so bad, my uncle and the rest 3 ran out of that tunnel. My uncle said he remembered him and his 3 buddies crawling out of that tunnel, and then when they finally got out to the exit, they heard that scream of that kid again. That's when my uncle and the rest 3 looked with wide eyes and obviously fear in their faces. They made it to the end of that tunnel. There were no living things at the end of it, and those calls for help were still coming around from that little boy. And what happened next was unbelievable, what my uncle said. No! That's when my uncle and them bursted out of there. They ran, not looking back. My uncle and them has made it out in one piece, and one of his friends was giving out a flag, meaning that the tunnel has been searched and cleared. What chills my uncle to the bone is the tunnel has been searched and cleared, and those calls for help and that creature of a scream was still happening. My uncle said that he will never forget that creature of a scream. My uncle said this was the most terrifying thing he has ever experienced his entire 4 years in Vietnam. Story 2. I used to serve in the military 4 years ago, and I had a lot of shifts back then. One shift that I really loved and enjoyed the most was the nighttime shift, the graveyard shift. I used to admire the graveyard shift, now I became scared of it, and here's the story why. There I was, just drinking my mug of Mountain Dew, just minding my own business. And meanwhile just watching some YouTube videos. Meanwhile, when I was watching my video, I heard someone go, pop. I looked up, nobody wasn't there. But as usual, I just shrugged it off as a noise, so I just got back on my YouTube video. Then a few minutes later, I heard somebody walking around the graveyard. I looked up, nobody wasn't there. So I decided to get up and look. I looked. No, I couldn't find nobody, but I still kept on hearing footsteps getting closer to me, but nobody wasn't there, so I was like, okay, what the heck is going on here? So I went back to where I was sitting, and I asked my boss if I could just go home, and he said, no, you have to watch it all night. I used to admire this job, now I became a little bit more scared of it now. And right after I got off the phone with my boss, I looked up and I saw a soldier looking dead at me. And when I blinked, he disappeared. I was like, okay. And then when I looked at one of the graves for some reason, I saw the soldier there, and then he slid down the grave. I was like, okay, did I just witness a ghost? Or are my mind just playing tricks on me? So I went over to the grave, I took a peek down to see what was in it. Then I saw the pale soldier, just his ghostly face. He quickly looked up at an angry expression. Then I slid back. I quickly ran out of that graveyard. I went to my boss. I called him. And then I said, no, I'm going home. I have to go home early. And then my boss was really mad at me. My boss would wind up giving me a different shift. I really didn't care about it. I just had a really nightmare thing in that grave that night. Was that a soldier who died in that graveyard? I don't know. It freaks me out to the bone to this day. Subscribe for more.